My boyfriend broke up with me for the pettiest reason after I spent years supporting him emotionally and financially, but he seemed to forget one major detail: the house is in my name. Now, while I sleep peacefully in my bed, he's living out of his car, wondering where it all went wrong. Let me preface this by saying I've been with Finn for 6 years. 6 years of what I thought was love, loyalty, and plenty of patience. And by patience, I mean I was the one footing the bill while he hopped from one passion project to the next. There was his YouTube channel that never took off, despite his bold claims he'd be bigger than PewDiePie, the NFT craze, where he insisted he was ahead of the curve. Spoiler alert, he wasn't, and his brief stint trying to make it in crypto, where he lost most of his savings. Through it all, I handled the mortgage, utilities, groceries, and even the car payments. Finn was the dreamer, and I guess I was the fool who kept buying into his dreams. Every time he came to me with a new idea, eyes shining with excitement, I pushed aside my doubts and backed him up. This time, it'll be different, he'd say, and like an idiot, I believed him. Then, things started to change about 2 weeks ago. Finn began acting distant, spending more time on his phone, and making odd remarks about needing space to grow and find himself. At first, I brushed it off as his usual philosophical prelude to another project. But soon, he started criticizing our home, a place that was practically new, pointing out unwashed dishes and unfolded laundry in a tone I'd never heard before. Then, last week after I got home from work, he sat me down at our kitchen table with a serious look I'd only seen when he was about to announce another doomed venture. What he said next made me wonder if I was living in some alternate reality. "I think we should break up," he said. "You don't do enough around the house." I laughed, assuming he was joking, but his face remained stone cold. Something shifted inside me. This was the man I'd essentially been mothering for 6 years, and now he was accusing me of not pulling my weight. When I asked him to explain, expecting he was just being dramatic, he doubled down. "You never clean up after yourself, and I feel like I do all the emotional labor here. I'm always the one who have to point out when things need to be done. Let me paint you a picture. I work crazy hours to keep us afloat while he stays home, dreaming up his next big move. Sure, sometimes I'm too exhausted to do the dishes or fold the laundry right away. Sometimes I leave my coffee mug on the counter or forget to put my shoes away. But every single bill, mortgage, utilities, groceries, is paid by me." Meanwhile, Finn's biggest contribution to our home has been reorganizing the bookshelf by genre 3 times and tossing out my perfectly good Tupperware because it didn't spark joy anymore. This is the same guy who loses it if the Wi-Fi goes out for more than 5 minutes. Guess who always ends up calling the provider? Me. And every birthday, holiday, or weekend outing I plan, he won't even order takeout without asking my opinion 3 times, and still manages to get my order wrong. Then it got even stranger. After his breakup announcement, Finn started acting like the house was already his. He made a smug comment about how this would be a fresh start for both of us, suggesting I could move back in with my mom or something. He even began discussing how he'd turn the guest room into his office once I was gone, and maybe even get a dog since there'd be no one left to complain about the fur. That's when it hit me. He'd completely forgotten, or perhaps never realized, whose name is actually on the deed. Hint, it's not his. In fact, this house was my inheritance from my grandparents, and I'm the sole owner. Every mortgage payment, every repair, every utility bill, it's all in my name. I excused myself, went upstairs, and locked myself in our bedroom. I wasn't about to argue or try to change his mind. No, I was going to let him sit in his little delusion as long as he wanted. Let him think he's winning this breakup. Let him believe I'm packing my bags and leaving. Because here's the thing, Finn has no idea what's coming. He has no clue that he's about to lose everything, and honestly, I can't wait to watch him realize just how badly he screwed up. Update, in my last post, I mentioned that my boyfriend, well, ex-boyfriend now, Finn broke up with me out of nowhere, claiming I didn't do enough around the house. Of course, this was laughable because I've been the one paying for everything, mortgage, utilities, groceries, while he's been working on himself for the past 3 years. And let's not forget, I also cooked, cleaned, and did every chore not somehow tied to his precious gaming setup. But here's the kicker. After the breakup, Finn acted like he owned the place. I think it took him about 5 seconds to decide the house was his. He never said it outright, but the way he carried himself made it clear. He started lounging around like the king of a castle he didn't build, leaving a mess everywhere and gaming until 4 a.m. as if nothing had changed. He even began telling me what I needed to pack up so I could leave in an orderly fashion. Meanwhile, I sat in shock, wondering just how far this delusion would go. Spoiler, it went very far. About a week after the breakup, Finn told me he was having a friend over. This was during one of those moments when he barely looked at me, muttering something about how I needed to respect his space in my own house, apparently. I nodded, thinking, okay, let's see who this friend is. When the doorbell rang, I opened it to find a woman standing there with a bright smile and a bottle of wine. Her name was Mila, and let me tell you, she was perfectly nice and polite, but it didn't take a detective to see this wasn't just a friend. The way she looked at Finn said it all. They were clearly together. Finn didn't even properly introduce us. He just breezed past me like I was invisible, giving Mila a little tour of the house, my house. And oh, he did it with the flair of a real estate mogul. This is the living room. I've been thinking about a new couch, something modern. This is the kitchen. I love the open layout, perfect for hosting. And this is my office, where I do most of my work these days. I nearly choked when he said that last part. The man hasn't had a job since 2018. The office he was referring to is the spare bedroom I set up for him to maybe work on freelance projects. It's mostly just where he plays Fortnite. Mila was all smiles, clearly imagining herself living here in a Pinterest-perfect life. Meanwhile, I stood in the kitchen gripping my coffee mug so hard I worried it might crack. At that moment, I had two choices: explode and let them both know exactly how I felt, or play it cool and let Finn dig his own hole. I chose the latter. Honestly, I was curious to see how far he'd take this charade. The entire evening, Finn acted like he'd already moved on and was graciously allowing me to stay until I figured things out. He even pulled me aside to say, "I think it's best if we work on a timeline for when you'll be out." No rush, of course, but Mila and I need to start planning. Planning what, a housewarming party in my living room? I just smiled and said, "Oh, don't worry about me, I'm handling everything." You should have seen his smug face. He truly thought he'd won. The next morning, while Finn was still asleep, I made my move. I called a locksmith to change all the locks, and he was in and out in less than an hour. I paid him, thanked him, and sat down with a cup of tea to wait. When Finn finally woke up and strolled into the kitchen like he owned the place, I casually said, "By the way, I had the locks changed this morning. You'll need to grab your things and be gone by the end of the day." His face went into full panic. He turned pale. "What do you mean you changed the locks?" "You can't do that," he protested. "Oh, I absolutely can," I replied. "This is my house, it's in my name. You're not on the deed, you're not on the mortgage, and now you're not welcome here." He tried to argue and even pleaded with me. At one point, he tried to guilt-trip me, saying, "I thought you loved me. I thought we were building something together." Meanwhile, Mila came over, probably expecting another cozy evening with her man. Instead, she got a front-row seat to Finn packing his things while I stood there with arms crossed, reminding him not to forget his gaming chair. She looked confused and kept saying, "Wait, isn't this your house?" But Finn didn't even answer her. By the end of the day, Finn was gone, and so was Mila. I poured myself a glass of wine, sat down on the couch that Finn had wanted to replace, and thought about how close I came to losing everything because I was too generous with my time, money, and patience. Never again. And just so you know, Finn is now couch surfing with friends. I even heard from a mutual acquaintance that Mila dumped him when she realized he was unemployed, broke, and basically homeless. Karma's a beautiful thing, isn't it? Second update. I thought that was the end, but apparently, Finn wasn't done embarrassing himself. A few days after he left, I got a call from our mutual friend Caleb, who wanted to check in. I could tell by his tone he was fishing for something, so I asked him straight up, "Did Finn send you?" Caleb hesitated, then eventually spilled the beans. It turns out Finn had been planning this breakup for months. He'd been telling everyone, friends, acquaintances, even his family, that he was about to take over the house and start a new chapter. He painted himself as the long-suffering boyfriend who'd put up with my nagging for years. According to him, the house was his because of all the work he put into making it a home. I had to pause Caleb there because I nearly choked laughing. What work? The man barely did his own laundry, let alone maintain the house. I asked Caleb if Finn ever mentioned that the house was in my name, and he said, "You'd probably just leave when he asked, and if you didn't, he'd figure it out." Oh, Finn's sweet, delusional Finn. Apparently, Finn was so confident I'd just roll over and give him the house that he even threw himself a little victory lap before the breakup. He told people he was finally free to focus on his life and even planned to host a housewarming party in my house. The audacity. Caleb also mentioned something that really pissed me off. Finn had been downplaying everything I did for him. He told people I was barely paying the bills and that he was the one holding everything together, even though he didn't even know how much the mortgage was each month. The lies were so bold and bizarre that I couldn't help but laugh. I thanked Caleb for the info and started plotting how to wrap this up in a way Finn would never forget. At first, I considered just letting it go. Finn was gone, the house was mine, and I could finally move on. But then I remembered all the crap he put me through, years of emotional manipulation, financial freeloading, and this ridiculous smear campaign. No, I wasn't going to let it slide. I decided to hit Finn where it hurt most, his ego. First, I sent a polite but firm group message to our mutual friends, clarifying a few things. I stated that the house was in my name 100%. Finn never paid a dime toward the mortgage or bills. Any claims that he built our life together were outright lies. I kept it factual and unemotional, but I made sure to include screenshots of our old lease, utility bills with my name on them, and even a photo of the deed with only my name on it. I wasn't about to let him twist the narrative. Second, I reached out to a local charity that helps people furnish their homes and donated all of Finn's leftover junk, his old desk, a couch he never even sat on, and even the gaming chair he left behind in his rush. They were thrilled to take it, and I was thrilled to see it go. Lastly, I decided to inform Finn's parents about what really happened. They'd always been kind to me, and I felt they deserved to know the truth. I didn't go into every detail, but I made it clear that Finn's victim narrative was a complete fabrication. The group message blew up almost immediately. Most people were shocked but supportive, saying they had no idea Finn was spinning such a ridiculous story. A few of his closer friends tried to defend him, saying he was going through a lot, but I shut that down quickly. We all go through things, I said, but that doesn't give you the right to lie and steal. Of course, Finn found out about the message and called me furious. He accused me of ruining his life and said I had no right to air our dirty laundry. I calmly told him that he'd been airing it out for months himself. I just set the record straight. Then I hung up and blocked him. As for his parents, they were horrified. They apologized profusely, saying they had no idea Finn had treated me so poorly. His mom even offered to pay back some of the bills he racked up, but I declined. I wasn't after money, I just wanted them to know the truth. The rail kicker came a few weeks later when I ran into Mila at a coffee shop. She approached me, clearly embarrassed, and apologized for getting involved. She said Finn had lied to her about everything, including the whole house situation. Then she told me the funniest thing I've heard all year. Finn was living in his car. Apparently, none of his friends wanted to take him in after learning the truth, and even his parents weren't interested in bailing him out. He burned too many bridges and now has to deal with the fallout. I don't wish homelessness on anyone, but in his case, I can't say I feel too bad. He made his bed, and now he's got to lie in it. Third update, remember how I mentioned Finn wasn't done trying to get his house back? Well, grab your popcorn because this story just got even more ridiculous. Last week, I was having lunch with my sister Nora when she started acting weird. She kept checking her phone and giving me these strange looks, like she wanted to tell me something but couldn't figure out how. Finally, I just asked, "What's up?" "Don't be mad." She started hesitantly, which is never a good sign, but then said, "Finn reached out to me last week." I nearly spat out my drink. It turns out Finn has been telling everyone who will listen that we had some sort of verbal agreement about the house. According to him, we were practically married, which wasn't true, and that he had contributed significantly to the household, which he hadn't. And here's the kicker. He even asked Nora for money, not just a little cash, but enough to get back on his feet and fight for what he claimed was rightfully his. And she actually gave it to him. Before anyone grabs their pitchforks, let me explain. Nora and I have always been close, and she's usually the smartest person in the room. I know, but Finn apparently spun this sob story to her, claiming he'd poured everything into our relationship and was now living in his car because of me. He even showed her screenshots of old bills he'd paid, conveniently omitting that he used my money. I felt sorry for him. Nora, looking sheepish, admitted that he was crashing in his car and seemed so convinced about his version. All he needed was enough cash to start over. I sat there, reeling from the betrayal. "How much did you give him?" she mumbled over her coffee. $2,000. I was about to explode, but then Nora pulled out her phone and showed me their text exchange. As I scrolled through it, I realized something. My sister might be sharper than I'd thought. You see, Nora hadn't just handed over the money. She made him sign a legit IOU with repayment terms and interest, even convincing him to use his car as collateral. When I asked why she went through all that for a small loan, she just smiled and said, I wanted proof of how desperate he was, and having a document might come in handy later. I could have hugged her right then, but wait, the story gets even wilder. Remember Caleb, our mutual friend who spilled the beans about Finn's pre-breakup schemes? He sent me screenshots of Finn's social media posts where Finn painted himself as a victim, a guy duped by a calculated gold digger who trapped him just to steal his future earnings. Yes, you read that right. According to him, I spent 6 years propping up his unemployed self because I was after his future cash, the money he was supposed to make from all those doomed projects I funded. His posts were packed with vague claims that I manipulated him and took advantage of his trust. In his new narrative, he insisted he was the one emotionally supporting me when I couldn't keep any relationship stable. And this from the same guy who once had a 3-hour meltdown because I bought the wrong brand of energy drink. But here's where it really gets interesting. My friend Zoe has been tracking everyone Finn's contacted, and it turns out he's been telling different stories to different people. To some, he's the victim of a controlling ex. To others, a self-sacrificing partner who gave up everything for me. And to a few, he even claims we had a business partnership that I betrayed. The tales only get crazier. Last week, he told someone that I promised to put his name on the deed as a birthday present, but then reneged out of spite. Pretty creative for someone who once completely forgot my birthday while busy chasing his Twitch streaming dream. Yesterday, I received a barrage of increasingly frantic messages from him about exposing all my secrets. He threatened to reveal every detail about me, though I'm curious which secrets he thinks he has, considering I know all about his failed cryptocurrency investments, and that time he tried to launch a career as a dog photographer using my camera. I haven't replied, but I saved every message. Something tells me this isn't over yet. Finn has never been good at facing reality, and now that he's likely blown Nora's money on another get-rich-quick scheme, I'm sure he's plotting another plan to snag what he thinks he's owed. Last update. Last Sunday, while doing my weekly grocery shopping, I literally ran into Finn's mom at the store. I tried to smile and pass by, but she grabbed my cart and said, "We need to talk now." Her tone was different, concerned yet a bit angry. She invited me for coffee, and something in her voice made me agree. Once we sat down, she took a deep breath and said, "I need to tell you what Finn's been up to because this has gone too far." It turns out Finn showed up at his parents' house last week with an elaborate story about reclaiming the house. According to him, he had evidence that I somehow tricked him into putting all the bills in my name, even claiming he had proof that he'd given me cash for the down payment. His mom cut him off immediately, reminding him that she and his dad were there when I bought the house, long before Finn even moved in. But Finn just talked over her, going on about building a case and needing to borrow money to set things right. When his parents refused to lend him money, he completely lost it, hurling accusations that they never supported his dreams and were siding with me over their own son. His mom looked so exhausted as she explained, "He's not the boy I raised. I don't know what happened to him." And then she got even more dramatic. She told me about things Finn had done that I never knew, like telling his younger sister that he'd bought me out of the house months ago, which is why he needed to borrow money from her to fix up his property. His 19-year-old sister, trusting her big brother, handed over her savings. Or how he'd been spinning different versions of our story to relatives, some even claiming we were secretly married, others that I promised him the house in exchange for sweat equity, and even telling his grandmother that I was holding his gaming equipment hostage, the very gear he'd donated to charity months ago. Then his mom showed me screenshots of a GoFundMe page Finn created titled, "Help Local Man Reclaim His Home from a Manipulative Ex." I almost choked on my coffee. The page was filled with completely fabricated stories about how he'd invested his life savings into the house, what life savings, and how I manipulated paperwork to cut him out. He even posted photos of my house, claiming he'd done all the renovations himself. The only renovation Finn ever did was rearranging furniture while procrastinating on job applications. And the craziest part? People actually donated, not huge amounts, but enough for Finn to believe his plan was working. He raised about $800 before his mom had the page taken down. I had to do something. "He needs to face reality," she said firmly. According to her, Finn had been sleeping in his car in their driveway for the past week, refusing to come inside unless they supported his cause. Every morning, he left claiming he had meetings about getting the house back. Every evening, he returned with a new update. Finally, his mom reached her breaking point when she overheard him on the phone trying to convince Mila, yes, Mila, to act as a character witness, testifying that the house was really his. Mila, for her part, apparently just laughed and hung up on him. "I'm not sharing this for sympathy." His mom said, "I'm telling you this so you're prepared. He's not going to stop until he's forced to." Then she did something that surprised me. She handed me a small photo album filled with pictures of Finn over the past few years, snapshots from family events, holidays, and casual moments. In every photo, he was glued to his phone or laptop, supposedly working on his next big thing while everyone else was living their lives. "I should have seen it sooner," she said. "He used people and always had an angle. I enabled him for too long, and I'm sorry you got caught up in it." I tried to return the album, but she shook her head. "Keep it. Maybe someday he'll want to remember the person he used to be. But for now, I have to do what I should have done years ago." She explained that she and Finn's dad had decided to change the locks and cut off his Wi-Fi access, no more crashing in their driveway, no more fueling his delusions. They've arranged for him to stay with his uncle in another state, where he's been offered a real job, no computers, no schemes, just honest work. Either he takes the offer and gets his life together, or he figures it out on his own. But we're done watching him try to tear down others' lives because he won't build his own. As we were leaving, she hugged me and whispered, "Thank you for showing him there are consequences. I just wish he'd learn from them." I watched her walk away, feeling a strange mix of relief that his own family finally sees him for who he is and sadness for the person he might have been. After that day, life slowly started settling into a new rhythm. I took some time off from the chaos to reassess my priorities and rebuild my emotional strength. The weight of Finn's manipulation and the ensuing family drama had been heavy, but with each passing day, I began reclaiming control over my own story. A few weeks later, I heard that Finn had reluctantly accepted his uncle's offer. His parents, resolute in their decision, had closed the door on his constant schemes, changing locks, cutting off Wi-Fi, and insisting he face the consequences of his actions. Finn's increasingly erratic behavior had left him isolated. Even his closest friends started distancing themselves when his tall tales became too outlandish to believe. For my part, I decided it was time to focus on what mattered most, my own growth and well-being. I met with Nora, Caleb, Zoe, and even a few relatives who had been unwitting pawns in Finn's narrative. We shared honest conversations about boundaries, trust, and the importance of recognizing manipulation before it could take root. Those discussions became a source of empowerment rather than bitterness. I also started attending a small support group for those who had been tangled in toxic relationships. In that space, I learned to forgive, not for Finn's sake, but for mine, so that I could truly let go of the resentment. Slowly, I reestablished trust in myself and set clear boundaries for future relationships. One sunny afternoon, as I was tidying up my apartment, I found the photo album that Finn's mom had given me. The album, filled with snapshots of a younger, hopeful Finn, was a bittersweet reminder of the potential he once had. I realized that while I couldn't change who he was, I could choose how his actions affected my future. I decided to place the album on a shelf, not as a trophy of his downfall, but as a cautionary tale and a symbol of how far I'd come. In time, the rumors and deceptions that Finn had spun began to fade into the background. His family's firm stance, coupled with my newfound clarity, had put an end to his destructive cycle. I started to rediscover the simple pleasures of life, quiet mornings with a cup of coffee, meaningful conversations with friends, and evenings filled with creative pursuits that once defined me. The resolution wasn't dramatic or cinematic. It was quiet, steady, and healing. I learned that sometimes the end of one turbulent chapter is just the beginning of another, one where I hold the pen, define my worth, and move forward with the lessons learned. And while Finn's story might still be a cautionary tale among our circle, I had finally found peace in the knowledge that I was free to build a future based on honesty, respect, and genuine care for myself.